Greater Centerville Historians, organized in the year 2000. The purpose of the organization is to preserve the history of the Township of Centerville, Cleveland and surrounding area. Gerald O'Neill, Charlie Bauer, Richard Wiegand, and myself, Kathleen Sixel, were the founding members. In 1831, the territory south of Green Bay was sold to the U.S. government by the Native Americans who had title to the land. The consideration was the promise of a reservation in another state. The Township of Centerville was established in 1850. The township had a village called Centerville. The reason for the hamlet's original name of Centerville was, in the days of the Indians, there was a trail along Lake Michigan between Manitowoc and Sheboygan. This heavenly spot was exactly at the halfway mark, so the early white man gave it the name Centerville. In 1849, the village of Centerville was surveyed and laid out in lots and blocks. The village of Centerville was renamed Hika when the Postmaster General informed the village leaders that another Centerville was located in the state. When it became time for Centerville to be renamed, a judge in Manitowoc by the name of Albert Schmidt would take kids hiking. The judge said, "You can't call a town hiking, so why not make it Hika?" Thus, the village of Centerville became Hika. In the early years, Centerville had the vision of becoming a lake port. To encourage ships to dock there, 2 piers were built into Lake Michigan. Many German immigrants arrived by schooners, and the village began to grow. The village had a brick factory, stores, schools, a Lutheran and a Catholic church, mills, saloons, blacksmith shop, and a fire department, and a brewery. When the brewery was built, the settlement began to flourish. But when fire destroyed the brewery, the largest industry, there was no longer a need for the harbor facilities. So ended this chapter of the development of Hika. 2 miles west of Hika, another settlement known as St. Wendel began to grow. It had a Catholic church, a general store with a connected dance hall, and a post office was also located in the complex, a funeral parlor, and at one time a motel. With the clearing of the forest, tilling of the land began. This prompted the exporting of lumber and grains. The farmers of Centerville looked forward to the building of a railway since they had a serious problem transporting their products. In 1873, the Milwaukee, Lakeshore, and Western Railroad was built between the settlements of Hika and St. Wendel and was named Centerville Station. In 1880, Centerville Station was renamed Cleveland after President Grover Cleveland. Cleveland, at that point in time, owes its growth to the fact that the Township of Centerville was a rich farming community, and farmers for miles around would bring products to be shipped by rail or ship. The village of Cleveland had several grocery stores, a furniture store, a funeral parlor, several saloons, Lutheran church, hardware stores, several gas stations, newspaper, photographer studio, several car dealerships, cheese factory, several feed mills, livestock yard, and lumber yards. The biggest business was the Cleveland Co-op, which offered many types of services. With the failing of grain crops, the farmers began dairy farming. With the abundance of milk, another industry began, cheese and butter making. Local cheese factories dotted the countryside. One-room schools were usually built near the cheese factories, so children would have a ride to school when farmers brought their milk. In 1958, Hika, St. Wendel, and Cleveland incorporated into the village of Cleveland. In 1968, the Cleveland Elementary School was built. The Township of Centerville has seen many farming changes, but dairy farming is still the primary vocation. Today, Cleveland is known as the seat of Lakeshore Technical College, which offers an educational alternative to 4-year colleges. An ancient proverb states, When an old person dies, a library burns to the ground. These words were the inspiration for organizing the Greater Centerville Historians. We hope to preserve as many memories as possible.
At a meeting here at LTC, I believe, and we can have this young lady introduce herself and give us some information as to what the meeting will be pertaining to. Go right ahead, please.
My name is Kathy Sixel. It is April 12th, and we had sort of a cool day today. This evening, our guest speaker was to be Art Edler, and he grew up in Cleveland, and they had a store on Washington Avenue. And in the store, there was a basement in the barber shop, but due to illness, he was unable to come tonight, but he wishes to come another month.
Okay.
And so we are going to have a little video, and we are trying to get an introduction to every tape because somebody asked me what is Centerville when they watched the tape, so we want to put this on the tapes what Centerville is. We taped various parts of Centerville, and we still don't have the talking on, but I wanted everybody to see it, and it's too long yet. We have to condense it. Okay.
Very good. And if you'd like to introduce yourself and perhaps a little something pertaining to a past Easter that you might recall.
My name is Kathy Sixel, and I think my favorite thing at Easter always was when the Easter rabbit came and we had our baskets and all our things, but he came in the barn. And he always had lined the nest with cedar, and my mother and dad had hid the eggs, and they were always warm when we found them, and they were brown ones in onion peeling she had boiled for in the barn.
Okay.
And that was a great custom.
Yes, very good. Thank you. And who do you have here, please?
Richard Wiegand.
Hi, Richard.
First thing I'll do is read the rules.
Oh, okay.
You want the
That'd be
rules
fine.
now?
That'd be
Okay.
fine.
Somebody's written them now for me. So I have to ad lib. Please raise your hand when you have information to add, and Mr. O'Neill will address you and move his camera so that we don't miss any information you wish to share. Always state your full name. Try and use full names when referring to people. Refrain from using nicknames. Please do not visit when someone is speaking. The background noise is quite noticeable on the video. Okay, rules.
And anything you can recall on a past Easter occasion at your home or someplace?
Nothing in particular. I recall an Easter I had abroad. I was in Seoul in South Korea in 1974 on my way back to the States, and it was Easter time, and I was in Seoul, and I was surprised to see the number of churches and the number of Christians in South Korea.
Oh.
I guess I was expecting, something else, Buddhism or something, but it wasn't. I was surprised.
Okay.
I have one other thing to add. Today it's 50 years since Rock Around the Clock was recorded. It was the beginning of rock and roll.
That's right.
So some of you people maybe don't like that, but I thought it was fine, and I took note of the yes.
Thank you, sir. Very good. Bill Haley was the guy's
Bill
name
Haley
too.
in the comments.
There we go. And who do you have here, please?
Walter Chris. And I remember my parents used to hide the Easter eggs, and I had to go around looking for them.
Ah, very good. Thank you. Was that on a farm or just in the village?
In the village here.
In the village. Okay, very good. And what do you have here, please?
I'm Florence Chris, and what I remember about Easter, going to church on Good Friday, and it started to snow, and we got out of church, but 2.5 hours later, we couldn't get home.
Oh my
It
gosh.
snowed that hard.
Very good. Thank you. And who do you have here, please?
I'm Dolores Kress. Only thing I can remember, my dad, he always had to have coffee cake on Easter Sunday
Okay.
with boiled eggs.
Ah. Very good. Very good. Good diet.
Yeah.
Thank you. And who do you have here, please?
I'm Kathy Wagner.
Kathy?
And I don't really have an Easter story.
No story on that at all, huh? Okay, very good. And who do you have here, please?
Alvin Yiddish, and I came home from being overseas in the Army on Easter Saturday, and I threw my duffel bag in my Klettner, and the Klettner said, "You ain't gonna walk home." He says, "I'm gonna take you home." So it was close to 1 o'clock when he took me home, and my mom wouldn't let me go in the house. Let me in the house because she didn't know me. She didn't know I was coming. So then I went over by Woody's, which were still up, and I told them to call, and then she finally let me in.
Welcome home, son. And who do you have here, please?
I'm Fred Jacoby. I wouldn't have had an Easter story, but my sister just reminded me that when I was about 5 or 6 or 7 years old, among several things I had for Easter was a chocolate bunny, and the neighbor girl, who most of you know, Eunice Judy, bit and ate the ears off it, and my sister said I was so mad. I didn't remember that. But there's another, I can have one extra thing too, right, Richard? And that is April 12th today is the day that FDR died.
Oh, really?
And I remember walking home from school, the teacher was boarding at our house, and she was so concerned about what's going to happen now with this Truman who was a nobody at the time.
That's right. Nobody knew. Very good. Thank you. And we've got the young lady here who'd like to introduce herself. Go right ahead, please.
I'm Alice Mathias. I don't remember a whole lot when we were kids, but I remember as we grew up, and we had 7 girls in our family and 1 boy.
Oh, okay.
And we always, when Easter Sunday came, we had our coats on, and this was when we were older, like in our teens, like maybe, or whatever. New Easter coat, new shoes, cap, and gloves, and the purse, I mean, not all matching, but all going together.
Wow.
That was a big day. Nowadays, you just don't wear those hats.
No. Very good. Thank you. And who do you have here, please?
Irene Dine? No, I don't have any Easter story either.
No Easter stories. Okay, very good.
I'm Willard Mathias. The
Yes,
only
Willard.
thing I can remember is when we were kids, they would hide our Easter baskets over at the dairy where they had more room to hide them all because there was a big family too. So we'd have to go and look around over the dairy for our baskets.
Very good. Thank you. And who do you have here, please?
I'm Lloyd Vogel, and the only thing too is Mother and Dad would hide our Easter baskets right in the house too, and the 3 of us had to go look for them. That's the only thing.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you very much, Lloyd. And who do you have here, please?
I'm Marie Pippert, and Alice stole my words. That's what we did too when we were teenagers, from top to bottom knew.
Really?
And other than that, I don't believe in the Easter Bunny anymore.
Thank you, Marie. And who do you have here, please?
Charlie Bauer. And the only thing I can remember, there was 10 kids in our family, and my mother did all the Easter basket hiding.
Yeah.
And there was 7 boys, and we just tore the house apart, and she said that would be the last time we're hiding baskets. But we always found them.
You always found them?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and from my thing, when we'd go by my grandparents, they would actually take the eggs, and they weren't in baskets, but they'd hide them in the actual chicken containers, if you will, where the hens actually were. And there was other white eggs and brown eggs in there, but we found the colored ones too. Okay, we have something coming up, I believe, at this point.
Okay, well, should we show the little clip we have?
Sure.
Okay,
We
and then
can
we
do
will
that.
show the other clip too. Well, we'll talk and then you can get it set up the next time. We have
Very
another
good.
clip from Frederick Jacoby we'd like to look at tonight.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you. Some beautiful recall here by a couple of gentlemen out of the clear blue, and it was in regard to when the dam went out in Hika Bay. And you'll introduce yourself and give us what you got, please.
Melvin Yanish, and in 1942, I think on June 29th, we had about 8 to 10 inches of rain here.
Oh.
And the Fisher Creek tore out the dam on Hika. And I was wondering if some guys knew what happened, if it went under the bridge or if it dammed up or something.
Okay, just 1 second.
Okay.
Go right ahead, please.
Willard Mathias, when that dam went out, I would say it must have been 15 years old because I was delivering milk with my sister. And then we got done with our deliveries in Hika, And then we went down, stayed down there to watch how it was filling up. The dam was, went out on one side, on the, let's see, west, no, it would have been on the north side of the dam that washed out.
Okay, so the water was so great with what the rainfall
Pressure,
that he indicated, that the pressure and it,
It was so great.
Okay.
And then there was this feed mill down there at that time, but they were out of business, but they were raising chickens in there.
oh,
And when we were watching, all of a sudden, parts of it would go down, and then the chickens were standing or sitting on top of that, whatever went down, and out they went under the bridge into Lake Michigan.
no kidding,
There was that much force there.
yes.
And then it was for hours, but we couldn't stay there that long. But for hours, every little while, a little more of the mill went. I mean, not the mill, the feed mill,
Yeah.
would go, and more chickens. But we had to get back. This was on a Sunday morning. So then my sister and I went back home again, but then later on, we'd always come back. But that day, when our milk trucks went out to pick up milk from the farmers,
Yes,
my dad told each one of them, be careful, wherever there is a bridge,
yeah,
that it could be washed out.
okay,
And sure as heck, one of the drivers did notice it before he got too far. Otherwise, he would have plowed right into this, it was all washed out, a bridge.
oh,
And then, so he had to go around the other way to pick up the milk,
okay.
so.
Wow, that was something else. And that storm, you recall that storm also as far as the rain and
Well, it
everything?
rained, I think it rained all night because I know, in the back of our dairy, we had water all the way almost to the dairy,
Wow,
and it overflowed the creek.
uh-huh,
But it was a lot of water.
okay, very
So you
good.
gotta be
And the
careful.
chickens, they took a free ride out to the lake, I
They
imagine?
never came back.
Okay.
How
Thank
many
you.
chickens roughly were there?
Do it louder.
Hundreds.
Yeah.
Thank you. Right ahead, please.
My name is Kathy Sixel, and I would like to know if anybody knows what bridge washed out during the storm.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Irene Dine, and Kathy was asking about what bridge. I don't think it was a bridge that I know of, but it was a culvert that the dirt washed around it.
Oh.
And there was a big space in the road.
Sure,
The
sure.
road was totally washed away.
Okay, and
Where
that-
we walked to school.
All right. And that would be the condition that this gentleman with the driving the truck came
Well, I
upon?
don't know if it was that one or not.
Okay,
And that night was really a long, hard thunderstorm. It thundered and lightened for a long time.
really? Okay. Well, thank you very
I
much.
remember that. On Centerville Road,
A mile south of X. That's the name of that road.
Center Road.
Fisher Creek
The
Road, you
railroad.
mean?
Center Road. Center Road, isn't it?
East-west one, too.
Oh,
Fisher
Fisher
Creek
Road.
Road.
yeah.
Okay,
Oh, it was farther than that. It was closer to Centerville. It was by the Schneider brothers in
Well, there,
in that.
it washed out below your hill, too.
Oh, that one too?
That was
okay.
close.
Let me pan over here.
Okay.
Okay, we got a gentleman who has a little more information there too.
Well, I don't know if I have. But my recollection is, I kind of remember that, but you know how that goes.
Yeah.
Too many years.
Could you explain what your
My
feeling
rec-
would be?
My recollection is that the bridge just below the hill by Irene's house,
Okay,
which would be,
Fisher Creek.
yeah, a mile south of X, and it's Fisher Creek Road goes
Yeah.
west only there.
okay,
The bridge didn't wash out, but it washed up around, so there must have been just lots of water going over,
yeah,
filling the whole basin, first of all, and then going over and taking the road with it.
sure, sure.
That was washed out.
Okay, very good, thank you. Just a little geographic condition here, but we've kind of finalized it, and you'll introduce yourself and give us that information?
Well, I'm Irene Dine, and we're back to this washout again.
Yes.
Which was part of the Centerville Creek, which would have ended up in Hika, going out to the lake.
Okay, very good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Introduce yourself and provide a question, please.
Charlie Bauer, and I was just wondering about the configuration of the dam. It was an earthen dam, and how the water was held back, if there was wood planking in there that they removed when the water raised, or why did the dam wash out?
Okay, Very good, thank you. Gentleman is going to identify himself and take on the question. Go right ahead, please.
I'm Willard Mathias. At the time when I was down there were men out there trying to get these wooden planks out,
Yes.
and they had hooks,
Uh-huh.
and they pulled and pulled, but the water pressure was so bad that they couldn't
Oh,
get them up
Yes.
to get the water down
right.
before it had washed out. And then a lot of people were saying those guys should get off of there. Maybe the whole dam will tip over and they're on top of it.
Yeah, that's true too.
Involved in that too. But
Right.
I remember one man that was in there. I don't know who else, but I remember Matt Kleckner being there trying to
Okay.
get that boards out.
Uh-huh.
But there was a committee that was supposed to do that beforehand already, but it came too fast, this water.
Okay.
And they didn't get them up.
Was there a lot of debris that came along with the water that came down that river area?
I don't remember too much of it, but because we were just watching this
The
mill all the
chickens.
time and the chickens going down. But as far as debris, I imagine there was a lot of stuff going down
Right, right.
into the lake that
Right.
time. There was an awful lot of water. A
Okay.
person don't realize it until
Yeah.
you see it.
Yeah. Thank you. A little question about if this dam had washed out twice. Now we're trying to pin it down as to what time this one was. Right ahead, please.
Melvin Yaney, I believe it was in 1934. When it was replaced, I don't know. But
34.
in 44.
Replaced in 34. It
Oh.
washed out in 24.
Oh, that way, okay.
Okay.
And then it washed out in 1924, and it was replaced in 1934.
Okay.
And then now in 42, it washed out again.
Okay.
And there was a lot of hay cut at that time, and a lot of that hay swam with the water
Oh.
and bunched up by fences, so there were dams along the creeks all
Ah.
over. And that, well, the farmers made the hay, the other hay first, the good hay, which wasn't cut. This hay got stinky and you couldn't even save it. In fact, they had a hard time getting it off of the fence rows afterwards,
All piled up on the fences. Wow.
sometimes 50 feet back.
Holy cow. Oh, very good pictorial there, sir. Thank you.
My name is Walter Kress. They were asking how many chickens there were.
Yes.
There was a two-story chicken coop.
Okay.
I should know because I used to manure it and catch it and collect eggs in it.
Okay.
And it was where there's a walkway constructed now that goes around. That's where the chicken coop was, where that
Oh.
walkway starts right now.
That walkway is there to this
The
day.
walkway is there right now.
Okay.
So it goes toward the west where the mill was and where
Okay.
the dam was.
Do you have any estimate how many chickens were there since you manured them all?
Probably a couple hundred.
Couple hundred, huh?
Yeah.
And they took a,
Said there were 300 chickens.
oh,
Yeah, it could be 300.
300,
chickens.
okay. Were they raised for the eggs or strictly
For
for?
the eggs.
For the eggs.
For the eggs.
Okay,
There used to be a hatchery there way years ago,
okay.
in the early 20s.
Okay, who did you work for at that time?
Hugo Ron
What's
owned
it?
the mill at that time.
Say that one more time.
Hugo Ron,
Hugo Ron?
Ron,
Could you spell that last name was?
R-A-H-N.
R-A-H-N. Okay. Okay, and he had the chickens
He
and?
had the chickens.
Okay. And how long did you work for him?
Couple of summers,
Okay. How old were you at that time?
17, 18.
Okay, very good.
$2 a week.
How much?
$2 a week.
And all the chicken manure you could take, huh?
That's right. Ray Hentz and I were the two that worked there.
Okay, was he also from that
He was
area?
also from the village.
Okay, was he a buddy of yours too, or?
Right.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Yeah, Richard Wiegand, Kathy here reminded me that that walkway that's in where that, where that chicken house, where the mill used to be,
Yes,
that was built just in recent years. I'm trying to remember, I think it was, 98 maybe, 1998, somewhere
Oh.
around there. And that's
Okay.
dedicated to Francis Buddha. There's a name or a plaque or something on there, and I don't know if some money was given for that or what.
For some of the, part of the memorials.
Yeah, from his memorial, so.
Oh, really?
So that's where that comes from.
does anybody know, was he a resident of Hika Bay?
Yeah, no, Francis Buddha was he lived in the town of Centerville.
Okay,
I don't know what road that is. Centerville Road.
oh,
And he was an international patent attorney,
Oh, really?
He was not from the area. I'm not sure where he came from, but he settled here, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, and he helped us. He was one of the organizers of the highway fight that I was in the middle of. And
Okay.
sometime, if I have nothing else to do and we get to that highway fight, we have a group picture of all of us on the Buddha property. That, you know, the supposed to be 100 people that were fighting the highway,
Uh-huh.
and we're all on there. I have a copy of that
Okay.
photograph.
All right. Very good. Well, thank you very much. Young lady here would like to indicate a little bit of information on the mill and the dam. Go right ahead, please.
I'm Kathy Wagner, and this picture is before the storm, and this picture is after the storm.
Okay.
And it says it was hit by a storm that caused a portion of Hugoran's mill to collapse and be washed into the lake.
Okay.
Newspaper clippings said that the storm broke at 1:00 a.m. and that the village fire department attempted to open the floodgates on the dam, but the water pressure was too great. Warnings by Mr. Eddie Hintz saved the lives of Mr. and Mrs. Ron when they leaped to safety as the foundation of the building crumbled like kindling wood and was washed by the force of the water under the bridge and into Lake Michigan, taking 300 chickens with it.
My goodness. Thank you very much. You
can
can just
take it.
indicate that there's some questions brought up about the residents
There were
of the
some questions
people
about
that
the
were
residents
saved.
of the people who owned these buildings, and they lived in the upstairs part of the building.
Okay, and that would have been then below them would have been the chickens, is that correct?
No.
No?
Chickens were in a separate building.
Separate building? Oh, okay.
There's a
All
black building over
Black
here,
building
and there's a
there.
white building over here.
Ah, very good. Okay, thank you very much.
Welcome.
The gentleman here will introduce himself, and he's come up with a little bit of history we would like to have him divulge. Go right ahead, please.
I'm Walter Kress, and they want to know about this mill and everything. Ron's lived in this mill upstairs in the black building.
Okay. And it was actually painted black, is that
It
correct?
was tar paper.
Oh.
It was tar paper on the outside,
Okay.
and that's where we ground the feed in. And the
Ah.
other mill here, this 4-story, that used to be a flour mill at
Okay.
one time.
All right.
And there's Arnold Stehert owned it originally, and he had a chicken hatchery, and that's where all these chicken business came from.
Okay. Now, where did he have a hatchery someplace else?
No, the hatchery was here.
That was his hatchery.
Hatchery.
And then
In the building that went down where the chickens were.
yes. And did his name? Can you say that one more time?
Arnold Stehert.
Stickert. Okay. And did you ever do any work for him at all?
No.
Okay. All right. And you were in the house that was covered with tar paper?
Yes.
You got in there and,
Oh, sure, we worked in there and helped build it.
oh, you helped build it
Helped
too?
build a home where they were.
Oh, okay. Go right ahead.
In this tall 4-story building during the war, during the Prohibition, they made booze.
They made booze in
Yeah,
there?
it's still in there. Moonshine.
Moonshine? No, I gotta ask, were you helping them with that too?
No, I wasn't. And this whole thing was owned by Hildebrand Lumber Company of Sheboygan. They had the mortgage in the thing.
Oh, really? Okay. Thank you very, very much. The young lady who has some more information providing here. Go right ahead, please.
I'm Irene Dine, and we're talking about the Centerville Dam. A wooden dam was built on the Centerville Creek in 1864, and it lasted till 1908. A concrete dam replaced it in 1924. A heavy rainfall washed away the soil at both ends of the dam. A new dam was built and dedicated August 9th, 1936.
Okay, very good. And that's the one that also got washed out, is that
That's
correct?
the one we're talking about.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Who had a question? Go right ahead, please.
A question for Walter, or Lloyd Vogel. A question for Walter. When the dam washed out in 1924, I was wondering what it looked like or what was left of it till 1936 till a new one came.
Okay, all right, thank you. Has been presented to this gentleman. He'll identify himself, please.
I'm Walter Chris, and I want to answer Lloydie's question.
Okay.
When the dam went out that time, they took telephone poles and put them up, and they just made a wooden bridge on each end.
Okay.
It was real shaky. You walked through the middle, and then you could shake it. And after the dam was completed, the new in 36,
Yes.
I think I'm the only one that ever drove an international truck across it.
Only you.
And who were you working for at that time?
Myself. No, we were kids, and I inherited a 1928 international truck, and we used
Oh,
to drive
really?
across there. We had no license on it, so we couldn't drive on the road.
Okay. Now, you inherited this truck from somebody?
Cleveland Hardware.
Cleveland Hardware. Okay, very good. You had good connections there.
Right.
Thank you. Had a question about the dam and why they rebuilt it and so forth. Go right ahead, please.
Yes, I'm Charlie Bauer, and I was just wondering about the dam that was rebuilt in 36 and why they bothered rebuilding it in 36, because the electricity was already in the area, so they didn't need water to turn the turbine to use it as a flour mill, I'm assuming. And Walter was going to explain to me about the flood planks, and I still didn't get the story on that. It'd be kind of nice to hear.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Question on the floor, and this gentleman has been pointed to as the man to answer it. Go right ahead, please.
I'm Walter Kress. And Charlie asked the question of why, about the planks being pulled.
Yes.
Well, there was a big plank, and there was so much pressure against it that they couldn't pull them.
Okay.
So after the dam went out and was rebuilt,
Yes.
they took and split them in the middle and put an upright so that they could knock the upright out and the planks would go out.
Oh.
Because my dad was on the bridge trying to pull them up that time when they went
Oh,
out.
your dad was on there
My
trying?
dad was on the bridge too.
And because of the width of the planks, such
And
a pressure
the
was.
against it, they couldn't pull them. They were swelled up and they couldn't pull
Yeah,
them out.
yeah.
So-
Oh my gosh. Okay, and
So
then
they finally split them in the middle,
yes.
put an upright, so they could knock the upright out and they would go out
Oh, okay, okay. For emergency conditions
for
anyway.
emergency.
Then as far as their question, I guess, went a little bit further. Now with the rebuilding, did they have to do this, or was there a reason that they rebuilt the dam in 30?
For aesthetic purposes only. It was
Aesthetic?
not used for water power.
It wasn't used for
The
water?
water wheel was still in when the dam went out, when the mill went out,
Yes,
but it wasn't used anymore.
okay.
They had electric power and it cost so much they couldn't run the electric power.
Oh,
Because every time they'd run it at night, the lights in the village would go out. Or when Stratman's had a dance, there were two boys that used to kick it in just to
just to agitate, huh?
make the lights go out. Then they replaced it in 1937 with a diesel engine.
Okay,
And I believe the diesel engine was still in there when the mill went out.
okay. Now, again, maybe I got the question screwed up here, but did you work in the mill itself at all when this all took place?
No, I was in service when the
You
mill,
were in
when the
service.
dam went out. That's why I
Okay.
wasn't around.
All right, very good. Well, thank you.
Wasn't-
Questions for the gentleman in regard to the dam? We're going back in history now. Go right ahead, please.
Irene had the records there in what, 1864, the original dam was a wooden dam. And it
Okay,
lasted to what, 1909, 1906? And then the concrete one was built, which in 24, it went out in 24 and was rebuilt in 34, 35 and was dedicated in 36.
okay,
And that was a concrete dam.
okay. And that one also,
That's the one that
that
washed
one
out.
that
we
washed
were
out.
talking about.
Then after that, did,
They refilled to both ends and it was just an aesthetic
okay, so the dam portion in the middle was left as it was,
origin.
and then they filled in on the
On each
bank
end.
areas? Now, did they must have let the water flow right through at that point, right?
At
that
that
there-
point,
that-
yeah, they could open the gates.
You
and
open
let
the
it-
gates and let her go right through?
Right.
No pressure buildup whatsoever? Okay,
So then the
And-
third dam was taken out when?
and yes,
And we're not sure when it was taken out.
1990 something.
1990 sometime, but Tyne Construction took it out.
okay,
There was no reinforcing bars in there and the state condemned it.
okay,
So
all
they
right.
had to take it out.
All right, very good. I think we've got a resolvement here of all the questions again.
And it was rebuilt that time by August Einert and Sons, silo
Oh,
builders.
yes, oh, really?
34 and 35. and
Okay.
dedicated in 36.
Did they come from around the local area here?
Kiel area,
Kiel area?
Kiel area.
Okay, very good. Okay, thanks a lot. Introduce yourself?
Richard Wiegand, Wally Crest next to me here said that that dam that was rebuilt in 1936 was built by August Einert and Sons out of Kiel. And they're more famous for their silo building. And when I did my silo article in 1988-89 for the Manitowoc County Historical Society, I interviewed one of the remaining sons of August Einert, who was living in Kiel, and he was retired. I was at his house, and I think he mentioned to me that they built about 2,000 silos
Oh,
that he
man.
can recall, you know, concrete
Sure,
silos.
solid
stave
concrete.
silos.
There was no
Poured,
stave.
oh, there was poured concrete, and also, I think they made the stave silos too.
Oh, they did too?
later on, yeah.
Okay,
And they went all over, you know, upper Michigan, Minnesota, Illinois, they went all around the state and out of the state.
okay,
I don't remember what other projects he said that they would have done, but, you know, concrete work of that type would
Sure.
have been characteristic. for them.
Can you give us a location in the Kiel area where their business was located?
Yeah, it was on 57 coming out of Kiel, across the Sheboygan River, going toward Sheboygan.
Okay,
Was the location. I could remember it was like piles of gravel and some other equipment there. And where this guy lived was also just off of 57 on the south side of the road.
okay.
I think it was right on 57. So
Are-
it was within a few blocks of where that, their yard was.
All right, very good. Thank you very much. Hand up, I don't know what he's going to be providing for information. Go right ahead, please.
I'm Fred Jacoby, and just to be sure, I suggested that your silo might have been built by Enid. Then I remembered that when we were talking about the bridges going down,
Yes,
close to our house by the Lightritzes and those two bridges on Point Creek, I talked to Hugo Janning at length about that and what he could recall. And in the course of this, it came up that there was another silo builder. Now, I don't know if this other silo builder was involved in doing the abutments for the bridges or not. That would be likely, but I don't know that for sure. I can't recall the details of the conversation. And he said the way you could tell the difference between the two silos was the one roof had a little different top on it and a little flatter roof. Enert built it one way, and this other guy, and the best way I can remember the name is, I remember I asked him half a dozen times on the phone how to pronounce it. Tutskowski or something like that was the other silo builder. But of course, the name that everybody knew was Enert.
okay.
But Hugo made clear that this other man built lots of silos around too.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Floor?
Charlie Bauer, and I was just wondering, talking about the dam here, if there was a designated owner that actually owned the dam, or was there a committee that owned it, or a community, or some organization that owned it and was responsible for maintaining it?
Okay, thank you. Who is going to provide some answers to some questions that were regard to who sponsored this dam? Go right ahead, please.
I'm Kathy Wagner, and this book says that picnics were held to raise funds for the dam, and they sent out a card
Okay,
to all the people in town. It says, the people of the little village of Centerville, Hika Post Office, take this opportunity to invite you to spend Sunday, September 9th, 1934 at Centerville. One of the spots that contributed greatly to the enjoyment of all was the old mill pond, but which, as you know, was lost to us when the dam broke out about 10 years ago. We have ever since tried to figure out ways and means how we could possibly reestablish this dam so as to get the pond back. Nothing definitely has been done about it until now, so we want you to know what we have planned to do. The Manitowoc and Sheboygan chapters of the Isaac Walton League, one of whose objectives is to preserve and restore the great outdoors of America, for present and future generations, have kindly undertaken to assist us. And for this purpose, we have arranged a gala fall festival with picnic and dance at Stratman's Winter Garden to be held Sunday, September 9th, 1934. All proceeds which will go to the dam building fund. There will also be a big parade at 1 o'clock. Don't miss it. We will look forward to have you with us on that day. Make up a party and bring or tell your friends to come also. The more the merrier. Dancing, games, and amusement for all. Come early and stay all day. A plate luncheon will be served from 11 o'clock a.m. to 1 o'clock p.m. by the ladies of the village at Stratman's Park. 25 cents a plate.
wow,
The committee, signed by the committee.
by the committee, okay.
And then we have some bills
Yes.
that were found in the Cleveland Fire Department's old files, invoices from picnics.
Okay.
Kingsbury Breweries, 26 half barrels of beer at $6.50 a barrel.
Okay, very good.
Sheboygan, for $169. Sheboygan Malt Company, 3 half barrels of beer at $7, $21. Two Rivers Beer, 5 half barrels of beer at $6.50 for $32.50. Lakeside Bottling Company, 20 cases of soda at 70 cents for $14. E.A. Burnt Market, 200 pounds of pork sausage at 22 cents a pound, $44. 100 pounds of hamburger at 18 cents a pound, $18. Miller and Bartson, 208 pounds of ham at 31 cents a pound, $64. Dick Brothers Bakery, 200 dozen semmel at 16 cents a dozen, $32. Stratman Brothers gave 3 pounds of sugar for 18 cents. 5 cartons of cigarettes at $1.15, $5.75. 16 pounds of coffee at 26 cents for $4.16. 50 pounds of onions, $1.50. 1 pint of liquor for the band, 85 cents.
Well, you're not putting it all down, I think.
34 bags of charcoal at 11 cents, 3.74. The profit made at the September 1934 picnic is not available. But the picnic held on August 10th, 1941 brought in a profit of $130.20. At the 1941 dam picnic, records show that the stand to bring in the most money was the bingo stand with a cash profit of $116.15. Money made at one of the sausage stands was $72.80, and the third largest amount was the East Bar with a total of $67.
Wow.
End of story.
Okay. Now, you indicated, or somebody did, pertaining to the fire department that was in the Hika Bay area also maybe was involved with sponsoring this dam at all?
Well, it sounds like they were a part of it because these bills were found in their old files.
Oh, okay, all right.
So they
very
must
good.
have been a part of the group.
Part of it, okay, very good. Well, thank you very much. And here was some more information to provide on who sponsored this dam. Go right ahead, please.
There were questions came up about the picnic and all that. Well, the Badger Fire Company had quite a bit to do with it, and after the war, I was a member of it until they disbanded.
Okay.
And Kathy wanted to know if they had a bottle of liquor for the band.
Yes.
The band was Romy Gauze.
It was.
I think everybody here would know, and that's why they...
That pint was just for Romy.
Pint was for Romy. And for one of the games that you had live mice.
Yeah.
I had to go out and catch the mice. For Rooney Mill, they'd put a mice, and then whatever hole he ran into, that would
pay out. Huh?
And about the damn parades, I was in both of them.
You were in, what did
I
you
had
do?
my dog in one of them, a Cleveland Trucking Company.
Okay.
And I rode a bicycle in the other one.
Ah, okay, very good.
Cigarettes that time, we snitched them 10 cents a pack. For marbles.
For marbles?
For marbles.
Okay. Very good. Thank you very much. He's prepping a question. Right ahead, please.
I'm Fred Jacoby. I'm wondering how many picnics there were, and then was there a picnic for that 42 washout also?
Okay, thank you. Question brought about as to how many picnics there were indicated that brought in some money to keep the dam going. Go right ahead, please.
I'm Walter Kress, and I believe there were only 2 picnics, so 34 and 35.
Okay.
They brought in enough money to rebuild the dam.
Okay.
It was dedicated in 36.
Okay, very good. Very good. Thank you.
And
yes.
Going back to the first parade,
yeah.
There was Paul Gauze and Romy Gauze were both bands, and I think there was a third band in there that came out of Manitowoc.
No, Paul Gauze had a band also?
It was Romy's dad.
Oh, really? I never knew that.
Yeah. He had the original and Romy.
Romy took over.
Romy took over after
But
a while.
on that occasion, both of them were providing music for that?
For that dam.
Oh, okay, very good.
And I happen to have a record at home I'm trying to get on the put on tape.
Oh, really?
Of Romy's 36 band.
Wow, great. Thank you. Musical things going on here. Go right ahead, please.
I'm Walter Kress, and they were talking about Romy Gauze. We lived right across the street from Stropman's Winter Garden.
Okay.
And one morning at 4 o'clock in the morning, I woke up and hear a band playing. And gets up and looks out the window. Here's Romy Gauze playing in the middle of the street, trying to get Louis Stropman out of bed.
And what kind of music? Was it pretty good sounding music?
Polka music. That's the best polka music you ever heard.
Okay, very good. Thank you. You'd like to identify yourself, please?
Yeah, Richard Wiegand, I want to add a couple comments about Romy Gauze. I agree with the consensus of the group here that was the best polka music that I ever heard. You know, Frankie Yankovic from Ohio got, you know, he was nationally recorded and all that stuff. Romy was better.
Yeah.
Was definitely better. In fact, the one or two of the big bands, if it was Benny Goodman, if it was one of the Dorseys or something like that, was trying to hire Romy Gauze to be a trumpeter for one of their bands. There were a couple of problems. First of all, Romy didn't want to work for anybody else. He just wanted his own thing. And of course, he would have had to stop drinking, and that wasn't going to happen. I would also mention that, you know, there's a history, I think, of Romy Gauze there's one of these monographs that's been written up by the Manitowoc County Historical Society, and if somebody could get that, we should bring that in sometime.
That'd be good.
Romy did a tour of Europe, I think in the 30s sometime, and he played for the Pope.
Really?
Remember that was in there, yeah. He was famous. This guy was famous.
Wow. That's amazing. Thank you very much. Introduce yourself, please.
Richard Wiegand. I've actually got some spare time once in a while, and I've been doing some homework for the group. The first thing was I went on the internet and I looked up the Judy Garland fan club. First I looked up the Liza Minnelli fan club, but I couldn't find it. There's a whole bunch of websites, and it's impossible to sort out between all the junk that's in there, you know, to get hold of somebody. So I did send an email to the Judy Garland fan club offering to show anybody around, you know, that might be interested in Judy Garland as to where the original Gum farm was in Town Mosel.
Can you spell that word?
G-U-M-M, Gum.
Okay.
Yeah, her name was Frances Gum.
Oh, really?
Judy Garland, yeah.
Oh.
And she was born in Grand Rapids, Minnesota. I have friends up there. And I think her father was born on the farm here in Town Mosel, either that or her grandfather.
Okay.
And she has relatives. There's Gums around the area. The farm went out of the family, you know, maybe 6-7 years ago, I think. But up to that time, it was the Gum farm. That's where her ancestor comes from.
Okay. And around here, that location nearby is?
It's on MM, I think, and right next to the interstate, right on the east side of the interstate. I think it's MM, a couple miles into Mosel.
All right.
I did not get a response. I sent a nice, you know, paragraph or two. I did not get a response.
Okay.
Doesn't surprise me. I mean, you know, but I may try this again. But I just thought I would offer, you know, that if somebody was ever interested, you know, we'd show them around, we'd introduce them to Gums, you know, whatever. I mean, just, so the second thing I did was on behalf of the Eniks and the Gutnecks was I tried to find out if Ed Gutnecht, who did not get on the Titanic from London or from Britain in 1912 to the United States, he was booked on the Titanic, is my understanding. He did not get on the Titanic, but his luggage went down.
Oh.
And Buddy Enick's, Melvin Enick's mother lost a brooch that she was receiving from Ed as a confirmation present. She was confirmed in 1912. She was 14 years old.
Okay.
And that brooch went down on the Titanic. It went down to the bottom.
Yes.
So I looked up some Titanic sites and emailed the first one. It was the Titanic Museum in Maryland. I emailed and I got a response back right away from somebody there. What I asked was there ever a list compiled of people who didn't get on the ship? And is there some way or method or something of either registering the fact that the brooch was on the ship or, you know, making a claim to it if they ever find such a thing, which they probably won't, but, you know. And the guy wrote back and he said that he thought there was a book, and he listed a book where there might be a list in, and didn't know anything about registering anything like that. And he said, why don't you call you know, during working hours or something, call this museum in Maryland. So on a Monday, I called the museum. I got a guy. It was a terrible conversation. He was clearly not interested in anything I had to offer. He said, well, first of all, you know, I think what Helen Yennig had said was that maybe the train ran late from London to Bristol or wherever.
He was working for the logging company at that time, and he was selling engines in Europe. And he sold the engine that morning, and he had to show the guy how to run it, and that's why I didn't make that.
Okay, all right, you can add that. Okay, anyway, so, you know, I said, you know, would the train have run late, you know, getting to the port? And the guy said no. He said with all those rich people that got on the Titanic, he said there would have been a hue and a cry, you know, and they would have been really upset. And he says nobody was going to let a train run late. He said more likely, he said the guy you're talking about was probably sitting in a bar getting drunk and forgot to get. Well, you know, he said we get stuff like this all the time. He said most of them are frauds. You know, everybody claims to have not gotten on the ship. You know, well, you know, I said the family that I'm talking about here, I don't think they have any intention of fraud. They've never asked for any money about this. I said I'm just presenting this, you know, to you. So this conversation was going nowhere. I mean,
It didn't improve?
and then I said, is there some way I can register the fact that the luggage and the brooch went down? He said, why would you do that? You know. So anyway, I said, okay, that's enough. I just, quit on this one. So then I waited a week, and then I looked up another site. It's some other historical society or something, Titanic. And I've got the copies of the emails. And I sent the same information to them, and I got an email back from the guy, and he said, as far as he knows, the only list that survived was a partial list that was in somebody's pocket that was on the Titanic and survived. He was a cabin boy or something like that, and he had a partial list, which was mostly the first-class passengers.
Okay.
He said that's the only list that he knew of that came up, because there was a big investigation in the States and in Britain, about why the ship went down.
Yeah.
And this list came out. That was the only list that anybody kept. As far as he knew, that was it. And I don't know if he said there's no way to register or something like that, this particular thing. But I'm going to try some more sites, because I know there's a Titanic Museum in France, and there's probably one in Britain, and I'm going to try a few more of these things just to get the story, out there somehow.
Very good.
It's a long time ago, maybe a lot of people don't care anymore, but I was just trying to get this thing rolling,
Okay.
We have a story. We have a Titanic story in this area.
In our group here.
Yeah.
Thank you. Very good. Thank you. Please.
Melvin Yiddish, and my mother was a sister-in-law to the fellow that didn't get on. He was a salesman for the Lawson Company, and he was selling engines in Europe.
Now, okay, I'm going to back up on you. The gentleman's name is what?
It was Ed Gutknecht.
Edward or Edwin?
I just knew him as Ed. It was probably Edwin.
Edwin?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and he worked for the Lawson
Company.
And that's located where?
Well, I think at that time it was in De Pere and New Holstein.
Okay. And he did what again? He represented them. He did what with the
He
engines?
sold their engines and motors,
Okay.
which were gasoline motors.
Okay, and he was doing this over in Europe?
Europe.
Okay. Go right ahead, please.
And he was scheduled to be on the Titanic,
Okay.
but he said sold an engine that morning, and he had I guess showed a guy he sold it to how to run it,
Okay.
and that's why he didn't make the ship.
Okay. Oh, very good story. Thank
But
you.
my mother's confirmation present with his luggage was on the ship.
Well, his luggage already had been put aboard.
Yes.
Okay. And do you know anything about, did he take an alternate ship or know anything about that area?
Probably the next ship out.
Okay. Very good. Thank you very much. You'll introduce yourself, please?
Richard Wiegand. I've been doing a little personal family history stuff, and there's a group of us that's headed up by a cousin in Florida who's retired, named Robert Leeprant. And he's a Hammond cousin to me, and anyway, we got this thing going. There's emails going to Germany and to St. Louis and to Ohio and all over the place, and we throw our 2 bits in there. I went to the State Historical Society. There's a group of books called Germans to America that are being compiled, and they now have covered most of the 1840s, with the exception of 1849. And what they've done is they've organized, they've indexed passenger lists of Germans coming to the United States. So I thought one morning, I'm going over to the State Historical Society in Madison. I got a little time. I went in there, and lo and behold, it took me a while, but I found a passenger ship related to me. And I'll just mention that on that ship were Carl and Frederica Hammond, and Frederica Hammond's my great-great-grandmother. The Hoon family across the road from us, Friedrich Hoon, and Christina Koch, who we believe was the wife of Carl Hammond. They were spelled wrong. They were listed separately. We don't know whether they were married or not or what. And Friedrich, or Ferdinand Mavis, who spelled his name Mobius, which I knew, who was the first person on the Wiegand farm and died shortly after arriving and is buried on our farm.
Okay.
along with the kid. These people were on this ship. They came over from Saxony. They arrived. They came through Hamburg, I think, or Bremen, I don't remember. Came to New York. Arrived on the 8th of July, 1848, and owned land in the town of Centerville 3 weeks later, on the 29th of July, 1848.
Really?
Yes, I have the deed for the Hoons and have the deed for our farm. And it was the same day, it was the same people signing it, everything like that. And I imagine the Hammonds, which was the next door to us, where Shafransky is now, was Elmer Gupsch or Willie Gupsch for many years. That was where Carl Hammond was. Also, I found on the ship some other familiar names. There was a Gupsch on the ship, and
Okay.
I've checked with the cemetery, with the gravestones, and it matches a Gupsch, and there was a Lawrence who was also on the ship, and that was the settler on Lavilla Litzy's, George Litzy's farm, next to Vogt on Rangeline Road over toward Spring Valley. There was a Lawrence on that ship, and that matches stones on the Saxon Cemetery also. And there's a lot of other names on there, and I haven't sorted them all out yet, but we know that some of these people who came from Saxony to New York came over together, to Centerville and settled here.
Okay.
So that was another piece of work that I've been doing recently, and we're trying to find other passenger lists. I found the passenger list for my mother's ancestor, and going to Howard's Grove, and some other things. So that stuff is out there. If
Okay.
anybody wants to start digging, and coming up with these things. So I was happy to find that.
Very good. Well, thank you. Tell, please.
Richard Wiegand, I'm going to read you a story out of a book called Wisconsin Lore. It's a kind of a ghost story book about Wisconsin. And this was a Centerville story. Some of you may remember the Slaters in Cleveland. Mrs. Slater was a Kassa. She was a sister to Bill Taple's wife, Emma Kassa. I don't remember what her name was. Anna, okay. Anyway, her father, they apparently were from that farm which is across the road from the Kassa Cemetery, which is north of the village of Cleveland. There's a little cemetery in the woods.
Can you give us a road location on that?
It's Dairyland. If you take Dairyland.
Oh, on the end of it.
Yeah, on the end of it, and there's a dead-end road, and that's a cemetery. And you go across the tracks.
Yes.
I don't know what they call the cemetery now. Centerville?
St. John.
Is that St. John? Well, there's another St. John anyway.
No, St. John's is the other one.
Yeah, well, okay, but anyway, okay, I call it Kassa Cemetery. And I think the Kassa farm was across on the west side, and I don't know who lived there. Wenzel.
Wenzel Kassa.
Oh, Wenzel Kassa, okay. Anyway, this is a story that Mrs. Slater is talking about that happened, she said, when she was 12. So this would have been back in the late 1800s sometime. And here it is. Of a similar nature is the yarn related by Mrs. J.G. Slater of Cleveland, Wisconsin. The authentic tale happened when I was about 12 years old and lived on a farm near Cleveland. One night, my father entertained a group of friends and business associates. It was a pleasant evening with serious talk first and laughter and jokes over a glass of cider later. When it was time for the guests to depart, my father went outside to tell the hired man to harness up the horses and bring the conveyance to the door. When he returned, we were all surprised to see him being led by the hired man. He looked queer and had great beads of perspiration on his brow. When he wiped them off, others returned. Mother rushed forward, deeply concerned. One of the men exclaimed, "Did you see a ghost?" Hensel is what it says here. Was it Wenzel?
Wenzel.
Okay, all right. They wanted to laugh, but they could sense that their friend was under great emotional strain. Presently, my father lost his agitation and detailed the following experience. On his way to the stable, he had been halted suddenly by observing in the gray shadows of night the figures of men in somber garments passing through a side gate, followed by a coffin borne by pallbearers. Strangest and most shattering was his realization that the faces of all of the pallbearers were those of the men sitting at that moment in his house. with one exception, for he could not see the face of his best friend, a miller and dealer in grains, among the figures in the ghostly apparition. He himself was one of the pallbearers also. This is his apparition. Okay. After the vision faded away, he could only stand horror-stricken in his tracks. He feared his legs would not support him if he attempted to walk, for there is something in the supernatural that strikes terror even into the bravest heart. Fortunately, the hired man came out of the stable with a friendly lantern, and noticing something was amiss, helped my father back into the house. His friends were openly skeptical of his story and hinted slyly that he must have drunk more cider before he went outside. However, their carriages were at the door, putting an end to further talk on the subject. After cheerful good nights, they went home. At 10 o'clock the following morning, one of the previous night's guests arrived on a bicycle, deep concern stamped on his features. He came to report that the miller had died of a heart attack while sitting at his kitchen table, where his wife discovered him when she went downstairs to start breakfast. His had been the only face my father had not seen in the shocking vision at the farm gate. The surmise was that in the phantom funeral, the miller was the dead man, for at his funeral a few days later, everyone else was just as my father had seen it in his out-of-the-ordinary vision. So this was Wendel Slater saw the vision, and who was the miller? Or who were the other people that might have been there? You know, I don't know. So this made it into the Wisconsin folklore, you know, something has made it into a Wisconsin book. So
Has anybody heard anything about this story before? And where was that farm? I mean, who's on that farm now?
Gilbert Bussey.
Okay,
that's the one.
You're pretty sure that's the place, not that there was another one.
Well, I don't know, but I think probably the cemetery was land donated by Kassa, and that's why his name ended up on it.
Yeah, because there were,
Yeah.
when I was a kid,
Who took off on the information we just heard from Mr. Wiegand, and he can fill in a little more immediate things. Go right ahead.
I'm Fred Jacoby, and I'm not sure that I can fill in, but there's something that might be related, because we used to spend a lot of time playing up there, the Shooty kids and us.
And where was that again?
Oh, by the St. John Cemetery, Kassa Cemetery, and that was, you know, because Shooty's owned part of that woods, and Leidwitz's owned part of that woods around it, on different sides of it.
Sure.
And so we'd go up there and you know, horsing around when we were kids.
Sure.
And then there was this old, not really broken down, but not in good shape anymore, log building.
Single building or more than one?
Well, I would think it was a single building.
Okay.
And which would have been just off the southeast corner of the cemetery as it's presently laid out.
All right.
I wouldn't say, you know, a little bit one way or another it could be, but down in that corner,
Yes.
it was pretty low there.
Okay.
And we used to play in there. There was full of chopped wood, or sawed wood, I should say, chunks of wood.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if it was all split or not. And we used to play hide and seek and pick flowers and horse around there, you know, our kids will. And so that building, and I thought there were remnants of another building there, but that's pretty vague to me.
Okay.
I thought there was more than one, maybe. And I'm thinking of it in terms of, is that possibly where this Slater family lived? Because we're thinking of Gilbert Bussey's place, which was Herman Brookshire place.
Okay, now could you show or tell me where Gilbert
Bussey
Bussey's?
and his father-in-law, Herman Brookshire, before that, and I don't know who was before that, that was on the west side of the cemetery, just 100 yards to the north.
Okay.
And across the road.
Yeah.
That road was probably there then, too.
All right.
And so maybe that was the place, too.
Okay.
But there was a building in there. And so then all of a sudden people got excited because they know of a story that someone lived there. And I'm guessing somebody did. It was a log building.
It was a actual log building?
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Thank you very much. Identify yourself, please.
Richard Wiegand, following on what Frederick Jacoby was talking about the location of the Kassa Cemetery and the farm, I've got a 1921 plat map of town Centerville, and I've located the Herman Brookshire farm here, and the cemetery is a little bit to the south of the homestead, right next to the railroad tracks, which was there in 1921.
Okay.
But not in 1872 yet. So this is the location of the cemetery, and this is Brookshire, and before that, do you have any idea, was that, we don't know where Kassa is right now, so.
Okay.
There's a Frederick Judy that also owns land there.
Okay.
That was Herbert, that became Edwin Schutte, and then when Edwin died in 1935, Herbert Schutte took it over.
And then there's a Charles Groupie on
Groupie is to the west.
to the west that has
Okay.
a farm there also. Okay, so that
All right.
we've located.
Yes.
Let's see, I was gonna make a comment. Oh, Jane Rain, who, you might follow up on this, but Jane Rain, if she lived on that, in that old house back there, and worked at the Hika Bay Tavern or worked in Hika, would have had to have walked, I would say, 2 miles, 3 miles, 2.5 miles back and forth if she lived in that woods. So I don't know. I never heard that she lived there. But I know, I just took a photograph of her grave recently, and I don't remember the dates on it, but it seems she was 24 years old when she died, and she died in 1850 something. I'm not sure. But
I got a picture.
there's what indicates that she may have not been an acceptable member of the community is the location of her grave in St. Johannes Cemetery. Because her grave is down in the corner, you drive in the cemetery and you go straight ahead to the north and you go down to the corner and there's a tree there and it's an old grave in the corner. But the rest of the cemetery was started on the other side, you know, on the south side, and the older stones, and then now there's stones next to hers, but they're all newer. So her grave site was isolated from the rest of the cemetery.
Okay.
And I know on Saxon Cemetery there were 3 suicides, and they were also isolated on the southeast side of the cemetery when all the other stones were on the north side of the cemetery. There were 3 suicides that I was told about. There's only 1 stone left there.
Okay.
And they were also isolated, so they had a wave indicating, you know, who was what, you know.
Who was what?
Yeah. So that's what I know about Jane Rain.
Okay.
You know, that she was buried apart from the rest of the people.
Suicide, did she?
No, but she was
Murdered, wasn't she?
she was murdered, which I don't know what's. Well, I don't know if she was murdered. I just hear
I'm
this.
sure it said she was a prostitute.
That I've always heard that she was a prostitute. But
Tell the story I heard.
Okay. Marie's got a story to tell.
Oh,
She
I'm Marie Pippert. I remember that Anne Shuri was in the Hika Bay Tavern, and she always told me that Jane Rain, I didn't realize she was 24, but she always told me that she was a prostitute and that she was murdered.
Okay.
So that's all I know about
That's all
her,
you know
too.
about it. Okay. Thank you.
And I remember, I know
Yes.
her grave is right next to all my father and mother-in-law, right next to the Pipperts, right
Oh,
in the
really?
corner.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Yourself, please.
My name is Kathy Sixel, and I sort of have a question for Lloyd because he was a caretaker of that cemetery. I had heard at one time many of the gravestones were broken, and they were thrown down a hill, and somebody said that they just set them up at random, that it doesn't always match where the person is buried, and they really didn't know if she was really buried in this particular plot. And the story that I heard was that she had worked for, I think, Stolenberg store, and that her boyfriend had let her behind. And then she had also worked for that tavern, and that they had found her upstairs dead, though, at Hika Bay Tavern upstairs. But it was because she had to work there for that. So the stories just don't want to jive together.
Okay.
We'll have to see if we can do research on that and find out more about Jane Rain.
Okay. Thank you. Did you work at the cemetery, or how did you?
Well, yeah, I'm Lloyd Vogel, and I'm caretaker at the cemetery, and they're talking about stones. which is before my time, but I know there's stones that are on below the hill that somebody cleaned up and threw them down, and they were supposed to have been stones that were on the east side of the St. George's St. Johannes Cemetery.
Okay.
And they're supposed to be baby stones, that's all I know about it, but I know the stones, there's some stones that are laying down below.
In other words, they represented an infant of some that was
That's what I was
died?
told, yeah, that's what I was told.
Okay, and some vandals or somebody?
I have no
this-
idea, I have no
Okay.
idea.
Very good. Okay, thank you. Lady here who can maybe fill us in with more information. Go right ahead, please.
Yes, I'm Irene Dine, and I was on the Cemetery Association for St. Wendel, and I was making a map of that cemetery, and I found all these little names on these stones, and most of them were babies. And
Okay.
that's right, he said they were all on the east side, and I don't know why they were taken away. But, so the president and I went down and picked out as many as we could carry.
And who was president?
Joe Leonard.
Okay.
And we took them up and put them up in they're in their utility shed up at St. Wendel Cemetery now.
Oh, really?
But I
Okay.
have the list of all the names of who they were.
Okay. Was there any larger stones down in
Yeah,
there?
there are some bases of the bigger bases that we couldn't move.
Okay.
And it's way down in the ravine, so it's very hard to get them up without a truck or a winch or
Okay,
something.
yeah.
We just took the ones that were little plaques like
Sure.
these.
Sure. Okay. Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And introduce yourself.
Richard Wiegand. I was in the Manitowoc County, or City, Manitowoc County Library, City of Manitowoc Library last week, and I photocopied, they have a book there with cemetery lists for the county from 1975, somewhere around 1975, and I copied all the Centerville cemeteries on there, and I'll just mention the cemeteries that I found in the book, okay, and I think it covers it. Saxton Cemetery, Kassa Cemetery, the two Rooster Church cemeteries, which are on what is it, Highway F, just on the north side south of Newton there, St. Wendel Cemetery, St. George, and St. Johannes. I have them all listed as separate cemeteries. What I told the people in the library was that there's two people buried on our farm too, which weren't in there, but I've added it to my notes here. And if you've got the names from that St. George or St. Johannes, and I don't know when this incident occurred, but it's possible that they were never recorded by the cemetery committee, and so we could add that information for the people in Manitowoc too. You know,
Okay.
if you could bring your list in, then we'd have some more names of those infants or whoever they were. Yeah, that would be very, that would be very useful.
Oh, great.
Okay.
Thank you. So?
I'm Walter Kress, and they're talking about these babies being buried at Hika Cemetery.
Yes.
My brother is one, but he's buried in my dad had to argue, but he's buried in a regular plot.
Oh.
He's not on the east side of the road.
Okay. So again.
He was buried in 1924.
All right. But they did kind of segregate.
Segregate the children from the adults.
They did.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I know we talked about this before. Maybe we can just touch base on it again. The sequence that the burial plots followed. Nowadays, it's families together. Years ago, somebody said that they went in sequence, I guess, as they would pass away.
No, my brother is buried with my parents.
He's buried with your parents.
With
Okay.
my parents.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Introduce yourself.
Richard Wiegand. I've located a Kassa farm, or a piece of land here on the 1872 Centerville plat map, and it would correspond to the Bussy farm, but it was a small piece of land that looks like a 20 or at the most a 40. It's small, and it's right here.
Okay.
And it actually says J. Kassa, so it may have been Wenzel's father, whoever that was, or unless he's got another name that he goes by. And there was an H groupie behind him on the west. And then there's an H shooty to the east.
Did anybody know the H shooty, who that was?
To the east?
Yeah, there was a shooty there.
Well, that's the shooting land, but H I'm not sure about.
Okay, and then there was an F groupie to the north of the H groupie.
What year is that?
This is 1872. It's a long time ago.
There was a Fred or Fritz groupie,
Yeah.
and of course Herbert, so maybe there was an earlier Herbert, I don't know.
And there's some other names on here. Actually, Kassa also owns some land across the road. There's a little piece going straight into the east, into the woods there. So I'm not sure if that corresponds to the cemetery because I see no designation for cemetery here, but it's possible that that's where the cemetery is. And then there was another neighbor, I can't hardly read it, it's like Spectum or something. Sweatham? And then there's a J. Schneider to the south, both sides of the road. There's a J. Schneider.
Okay.
So that's that area there. So Kassa did have some land that seems to correspond.
Thank you. Identify yourself, please.
I'm Fred Jacoby. My sister Audrey in Sheboygan sent this clipping to me that was printed January 28th of this year, 2004, the Falls News. And it was in relation to a program that they got going in Sheboygan about the 227 men and women that gave their lives in World War II. And so they're listed, and of course they're listed in a very difficult, continuously. And so it's so hard to read. Last name, comma, first name, comma, town that they're from. And it's just continuous instead of a list,
Mm-hmm.
But I went through it, and I found one from Cleveland. So now, could an address from Cleveland be part of Sheboygan County, probably?
Yes.
I figured. And the name is Zore, comma, Philip J. Z-O-R-E. Now, I asked Walter earlier this evening, right? I asked you if you knew recognized the name, and he didn't. And my question is, does somebody else?
I was just wondering,
Z-
Lorraine Culp, husband, first husband. Wasn't his name Zor?
Who's that?
Lorraine Culp. Elmer Culp's daughter.
Oh, really? Check it out.
From who though?
Well,
Adeline.
Yeah, but Adeline wasn't a Culp,
she might know.
Yeah, but that would be her sister.
She might know.
Maybe Lefebvre.
Or LaFave.
Okay, say that one more time so we got that on record.
I believe that Lorraine Culp's husband was named Zor, her first husband. He was killed over in Italy, I believe.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, Marie Pippert,
Yes.
on the way over here, those three non-natives, I had to show them where everybody lived. And then we got over here and I said, this was all Hetzel's Woods. And then I said, it's a shame that that house isn't being used anymore. And then Katsi said, oh, Richard would know about that. And she told me a story, you have to ask her about that. That somebody was murdered there, I never heard of that. And I want to sleep tonight, so ask her. I want to know.
I want to know.
Ask Katsi.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We brought up here, and Kutsi started it, so go right ahead, please.
Kathy Sixel, and yes, that is what I always heard, that one of the first murders in Manitowoc County was on the Hetzel farm, and it was underneath the bridge, and it was barn raising. And the men had drank too much, and I think they fought over a woman, and the man was axed to death.
Okay.
Axed, yeah.
Okay, Richard, anything on that?
Yeah, Richard Wiegand. This is written up in the Manitowoc history somewhere, and I've got a copy someplace. I'll find it, or we can look it up. But
Okay.
if I recall the story properly, it took place under the bridge or by the bridge. There was a love triangle of some kind going on there, and a man who was in love with this woman, and she was apparently not in love with him or something, I don't know, but he and a friend of his killed the other guy.
Oh,
And these two men fled into the woods to the west,
okay.
and they disappeared from Centerville. And one of the men came back like 30 years later and was seen in the village, and there was no arrest warrant or anything, and they didn't do anything with him.
Okay.
He showed up. It was the first murder of a white man in Manitowoc County. I think it was 1852. 1852, and it was there on that, where Lakeshore Tech is, that Hetzel farm, by
Really?
that creek there somewhere. Apparently right in that corner there.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah.
Well, very good. That's a way to end the evening, I'll tell you. Thank you very much. And I think we'll probably have Kathy sign us off, or Richard, whoever would like to do that duty.
My name is Kathy Sixel, and I want to thank everybody for coming, and we certainly went through a lot of information tonight. We started with the dam being washed out, the mill at Hika, the dam picnic, Romy Gauze, Judy Garland, Titanic story, Richard Wiegand family history, Kassa cemetery story, Jane Rain, cemetery list, article on World War II murder. Anything else? Did I miss anything?
Irene just said there was another murder down in Hika, that Dorothy Anderson would be doing
Coaching's
that.
driveway, they said there was a man murdered when it was a Schulte farm. Dorothy Anderson would know about it because when we had a Red Arrow reunion, he was there, that one of the Schulte men, and he talked about that there was a triangle, a love triangle, and this man was found in the culvert the next morning or something.
Kathy Sixel, and I want to know how many of you did your homework for this evening.
Uh-oh.
You were supposed to look up your name. Did anybody look up their name? I did not. I tried on the computer and I couldn't get mine to come up.
Okay.
So I don't know about anybody else. We will meet May 10th. It will be at LTC, and it will either be Ken Schnell or this Mr. Adler, and I'll see further, or more veterans will see. And I also talked to Tom Gratz, but he was sick also. Or did I say that last time already? I have to
No.
call him again and find out if he can come.
Okay.
Okay? And Earl, well, he's not up to it yet. So we'll have
Okay.
to just wait till he feels better.
Okay.
Okay?
So if you'd like to sign off with your name this time, and
Okay, Kathy Sixel?
okay, and who do you have here, please?
Richard Wiegand, anybody who talks to Earl Stoltenberg, tell him he needs to come in and defend the reputation of Jane Rain if he says otherwise. So we'd like to hear his story.
Yes.
So anyway, that's another reason for him to come in.
Very good.
I also had a suggestion.
Yes.
Besides the name thing from last time, people look up the meanings of your names. Immigrant stories is something that we didn't get to tonight. Your ancestors, anybody, why did they come over, or how did they come over, or, you know, any stories that you have from
Okay.
ancestors from Europe, Germany, wherever they came from, Ireland, I don't know what, you know, bring in some some immigration stories.
Okay, there was something about a veteran too. I
Yes.
alluded to it, but you
we
could.
got to it tonight, and I said this might be a good suggestion for another meeting, is to talk about veterans of the wars who lived in this community, or
Okay.
were from this community.
Very good. Thank you. And who do you have here, please?
I'm Walter Kress.
Thank you, Walter, and thank you so much. You were a good one tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
And who do you have here, please?
Florence Chris.
Thank you, Florence. And who do you have here, please?
Doris Cress.
Thank you. And who do you have here?
Kathy Wagner.
Thank you, Kathy. And who do you have here?
Melvin Yanish.
Melvin, thank you. And here, please.
Fred Jacoby.
Thank you, Fred.
Alice Matthias.
Thank you, Al.
Irene Dine.
Thank you, Irene. You, sir?
Willard Matthias.
Thank you, Willard.
Lloyd Vogel.
Thank you, Lloyd.
Marie Pippert.
Marie, thank you. And who do you have here?
Charlie Bauer.
Thank you, Charlie. And my name is Jerry O'Neill, the videographer, and I do also want to thank you folks for participating this evening. Very good, very rousing. I thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh, I want to say something.
Oh, yeah. I'm too late.
It's real short. I want to
Okay.
thank everybody that said nice things about my husband, Bernard Cress.
Very good.